What we'll get into, we're going to get into a topic here today that will help you get into better communication, which would start with getting them on the phone and not just necessarily what you're going to say throughout the call, but there's a few different ways when you have a cell phone and let's pretend that you didn't have anything at all but a cell phone. Maybe you hop down to your AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon store and you say, hey, can I make a business account? Maybe you have an LLC, maybe you don't, doesn't really matter. But if you wanted to start one, like $100 or whatever it is in your state, get that number registered as much as you can. Maybe you have it registered online so that way you can help yourself not get flagged as much with spam. If that ever happens, you can just call your carrier and say, hey, my number's showing up as spam or whatever, scam likely, but I'm just a regular person. I do make quite a few calls. You can get them to remove that for you at the carrier. Ask them if there's anything else, that you can do to get your number registered, maybe through some sort of website or carrier. You can Google or Chat GPT information about this. So that way you don't have to be like, what's the link and where do I go? Just go do some homework on it through Google and Chat GPT, and that's going to help you maybe have your number also with your name on it. So when I call people, they'll either see the state that I'm from or they'll see which actually kind of helps me in a lot of cases because it's not the state that they're from. The other thing that's really helpful when you're looking at getting somebody on the phone.
Hey, real quick, I only have like a couple minutes, but I just got the phone with Blue Cross.
All right. So um, basically, one thing that you'll want to do is when you're looking at your number going through to other people, put your caller ID on, your name associated with your number. So that way, you're always able to at least have as much credibility as you possibly can. These are just little tiny things that I think are kind of lost a little bit, now that we have cell phones. It seems like it might be a little bit more complicated than it was back when we all had house phones.
Mhm.
We all used to have the ability to just see everyone's name on the caller ID. Like if you didn't have caller ID, you were kind of like, I feel like most people at least had that. And so getting that kind of back is important. So just check into that. If you have a business or LLC, take advantage of it, go get it registered with your phone number, and then go and maybe change it over at the carrier. Um, I was learning from, I would say the top producer right now in the moment is Shedrick Cooper. So I adopted some things I got with Shedrick, and I said, "Hey, Shedrick, what are you doing? Because I know that you keep it real simple. You do something that any new agent can duplicate, their first day, their 50th day, and it works. And you're doing it today, and you've been doing this for years. So tell me what works." And he just said, "Hey, I got my cell phone here. I have two of them, but I don't ever use the second one. Um, I got a free line at T-Mobile, by the way. Like it was like, hey, if you add a line, we won't charge you for the line. So I just paid for the phone and I get the line for free. So I did do that, and I'd have like my personal number and my business number. So, that's one little step you can take. You don't have to do that. Shedrick just uses one phone. And I said, okay, talk to me. Tell me how you do this. And he said, I take 25 leads, I sit them in front of me, and I call all of them three times each, all the way to voicemail. Now, we didn't really get into, well, what if it's like, please state your name and the reason for your call? We were talking about this before we started today's meeting. And he said, just say something simple, like tell them who you are and tell them why you're calling. My name's Shedrick, and this is information for Betty. And then it'll say, hold on while I try to connect. And then, and do it three times, do it all the way to voicemail three times in a row. So that's something that he does. So then by that time, you should have 75 dials off of 25 leads. And then what he does is he takes off five of them and he dials 20 of them because maybe he spoke to a couple of them, maybe they hung up on him, maybe they just, who knows, maybe he presented to them, right? So now he's got 20 leads. Go back through, dial them 3 times each. That's another 60 dials. So now you're at like what, 135, something like that. So then now you go through and you take, maybe you have 15 leads of the same 25, dial them all 3 times each. So you've got an additional 45 dials. Now you're up to like 180 on the day. And then you have to grab another stack of 25. And then you're going to do the same exact thing with those 25. And he said, by the end of the day, if you're not at, um, you know, if you're not at like 5 to 7 presentations, then you should be at 500 dials. If you didn't talk to anybody, you should at least get 500 dials for the day. Now, I know that this might seem like like a pretty Herculean task, like you got to be Hercules to pull it off or something, right? But really, really look at it like a game. You have your tracker sheet that we have on the new agent checklist. Print that thing off and then make sure that you go ahead and play a game of how much can I fill this thing up every day, right? And then it's going to come down to, what do I sound like when I do actually get to hear a human voice? Because maybe that's not as often as you'd like, but you can use FaceTime audio. If somebody goes to voicemail and they have an iPhone, because you'll kind of notice when you're calling them if you have an iPhone, do like a FaceTime audio. That's an option that you have if you have an iPhone. Just an additional little tip there. FaceTime audio. Okay, another thing that people say, well, when I get a guy on the line, you know, what now, right? So a lot of you know this, like a lot of you guys maybe don't have a problem with speaking to somebody for 2 or 3 minutes, but they try to convince you that, hey, we gotta get off the phone because I have to go somewhere or I have a doctor's appointment. Man, everybody that we seem to talk to has a doctor's appointment all at the same time across the world. And then in addition to that, maybe they're just going to try to sell you on why we can't do it right now, which is the same reason why they don't have the policy that they requested information on. So you just have to realize that they're being a professional procrastinator. And that's if they could have a plaque on their desk, like, yours says like sales consultant or independent consultant, their plaque would say uh, professional procrastinator. Okay. That's the only bad thing I'm going to say about the people that we help sometimes. Okay. If they had what they needed, they would have got a dividend life insurance policy that required a blood test and medical exam when they were 20 years old, and they would have $1 million saved up inside of that policy, because they put $400 or $500 a month into it since they were 20. But that's not the client that we're talking to. We're talking to the client who is just not fully have the ducks in a row, maybe the way they'd like. If somebody has $1 million whole life insurance policy somehow, some way, which is possible, they're not going to be on the phone with us talking about a $20,000 policy. So that's just a totally different person. Okay. Every now and then you do run into somebody who has a good net worth and they're like, hey, I've got, a 401k, I've got an annuity. Um, Try to sell them on the features, advantages, and benefits of maybe why this could be a good option for them. It's more about the quick payout. It's going to be paying out quick. There's not going to be a hassle. It's designed specifically to pay out quickly for final expenses. But let's back to what we were talking about originally, which is just the initial first 3 minutes of the call. Does anybody have a question that they want to throw at me? Maybe an objection, something somebody said, something that happened? You can come off mute and just blurt it out real quick. Anybody? No hands raised? Okay, good. All right, well, and also if you don't want to come off mute, just put comments in the chat and we will work with you to help you get your question answered. So One thing that I like to do when I'm talking to somebody is I always like to use their name and I want to give them a chance to respond. So, like for example, if I was calling Steven, now I would say, ring ring, and he would say, hi, hello. I'd say, hi, Steven. And he would say, yes. I'd say, hey, this is John, and the reason for my call is that you had recently wanted to see what your options were to protect your daughter, Sarah, and you said that you like to go for long walks with your dogs. Does that kind of ring a bell? Now, my wording could be slightly different than maybe what you have in front of you or what you're using, but that's going to be like pretty much the same concept of what you're doing on your own. And if you have something that you're doing that's pretty much the same thing, just keep doing it if it's working for you. And of course, if it's not working for you, be willing to change. That's, and you can always look at your numbers and you can tell yourself how many presentations. I talked to 15 people, but I didn't do one presentation. So you should at least be able to do a presentation for one in every five people that you talk to. I would hope. And maybe it's better for some people than others. So if we look at that tracking sheet as a leader, we're going to be able to look and see where do we need help the most? Is it with the greeting? Is it with the presentation? Maybe it's something towards the end of that presentation where we're just not able to finalize the sale. So, number one, you're here at the meeting. That's the first box we can check. The second box is the effort. And then the third box is the tracking of your effort. And then now the fourth step would be, okay, hey, I'm here. I'm here to help you. My name is John, and I'm your leader. I'm here to help. I'm your friend. That's what John Maxwell always says, by the way. He says, hey, my name is John, and I'm your friend. I'm here to help. So, but I can't help you if you don't help yourself, right? So, tracking those numbers. So, your upline, your leader, they're there to serve. To me, to lead, it means to serve. And I would want to look at your call recording and I would want you to listen to your own call of yourself if you can, before you come to me. And by the way, if you're using your cell phone, just a friendly tip, I would recommend that you have like another device, a computer, a tablet, anything that can record. Because maybe you don't necessarily, or you can just press record on your phone and say, hey, listen, all of our calls are recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. And I don't think anyone's really going to care. I think if anything, it's going to make them feel safer. I mean, that's my opinion. So if anything, it solidifies you as a professional because I would say 90+% of the companies that you do business with record their calls. Banks, anybody you call, Verizon, T-Mobile. So, maybe you have another extra cell phone sitting nearby, put it on speaker, you can record that call, and then I dare you to listen to it later because I am not somebody who likes the sound of my own voice, I promise. But I can tolerate it now. I used to feel like it was nails on a chalkboard, but now I feel like I can get through this. I can listen to myself. I didn't want to, but that's an indication that you probably should do it. Is if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable listening to yourself, then that just tells me that you probably haven't done it enough, right? So make sure that you record your call if you can. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. And then just tell them that you're recording it so you follow the law. Every state's different. In New York, you don't have to tell them. In Florida, you do. So there's just laws that you have to follow. But when you record that call, listen to it later. And if you don't like the way you sound, then change it. Maybe, oh, I could have said this a little better. And then if you think, I don't even know what I'm doing wrong, well, that's when you want to bring in your leader. Say, hey, I don't even know what I'm doing wrong here. Like I listened to my call, I'm tracking my numbers. I can't even like close anybody. I can't close a single person. I can't even get anybody into a presentation, or I can't even get anybody on the phone. So you can get creative. If I've got somebody rejecting my call, I might throw an extra dial or two at them. if I know that they're just red buttoning me on the phone, I will go ahead and just maybe give them an extra dial or two just to let them know that I know they're there and I'm here and I'm not gonna let you slide because I care about you. And does anyone have a question? Because we covered quite a bit of information in 14 minutes.
I did have a question. So this
Yes.
is Muriel. This is actually my first week dialing people. So I just started a couple weeks ago. I'm having trouble getting people on the phone, and I'm wondering if you guys have like a schedule, like a calling schedule, like that you guys use that you think is effective. Like, I heard on the first day that you call people 3 times a day, at like morning, day, and night.
Hmm.
And then the next day you call them at a different time once. Like, what do you get? Do we have like a schedule like that that I can refer to? Because
Great question. Go ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
like I'm calling people, but like I honestly haven't been able to get any, like I got like maybe two people on the phone, and then one person said that they already had it. And then I had like a script for that, but then they hung up on me. And then I had another person just straight up hang up on me. And then I
Okay.
haven't been able to get anybody on the phone. So it's kind of a little bit like discouraging because
Understood.
it's my first week. Um,
Totally got it. I can
doing
help.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, thank you for being bold enough and courageous enough to come off mute and ask a question. Thank you for doing
Thank you for
that.
doing that.
Very good question. What I would tell you is a few different things. Number one, schedule wise, most states legally allow you to dial at 8 a.m. We're talking to old timers. Some of them get up at 5 in the morning. If they don't, they're just not going to answer. So don't be afraid to call them at 8 three times. Now, how many leads? I'm going to ask you a quick question. How many leads are you working right now in total?
Shoulder. You want to maybe start a little bit lighter, like get a feel for this maybe exercise. You're working 20 a much for this week. Smaller muscle. But then that's also what I thought about too, because my parents are old and they wake up early. So the first time when I called them in the morning. And I'm based in California. So for me, it's like around this time, like I would call them, and it would go straight to voicemail. So,
Okay, that's all
so,
right.
so even though I called early, because I kind of had that feeling too, like my dad wakes up at like 5 in the morning. Um, they
Yep.
still didn't pick up the phone.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't, my dad doesn't always answer the phone when I call. But I do know my dad gets up at 5 in the morning, and if I called him at 6 or 7, it's like his freaking peak time. Like if I call him at 10, he's like tuckered out, you know what I mean? He's like out of it. He's like, "How about you call me at 6 tomorrow and we'll see how much energy you have?" Because I'm like all energetic at 10 p.m., you know? So anyway, yeah, I would just give it a shot, you know what I mean? Don't let just know that you need to put out a lot of volume. And it's not always about the quality, it's about the volume. And then the quality always follows the volume. So when you're 8 in the morning, you can get 75 dials within that hour. There's no doubt about it. So you start your day off, it's 9 a.m. Maybe you present to two or three people. I don't know. Maybe you talk to two or three people. And then that next day, just turn that list upside down. Work it from the bottom to the top, top to the bottom. That's you don't have to get too complicated with it because a lot of people will try to introduce complexities to something that's just a very simple job. People out there drive bulldozers and dig ditches. Sometimes, I got construction going on over here, so I'm looking at that out the window. But we are lucky enough to be in the air conditioning, and the difficult part about our job is that we have to dial a number on a phone. And that's the hard part about our job. And then we have to dial our phone a lot and then only talk to a few people. So that is, you have to do it day in and day out. And that is the nitty gritty part of the job that, we don't necessarily talk about probably enough, but it is just the way that it is. And if you have leads, you want to be getting some fresh ones every week to the best of your ability. Your first week, if you're working 75 leads, that's a good number. That's a really good number. If you can add on 10, 15 leads the next week, work those leads just like we talked about earlier in the recording, do that. And that's the best advice I can give you is you just want to call those leads. Each person would get 9 to 12 dials a day, but at least 9 dials into one lead per day. And I guarantee you, if you do that, you'll get somewhere. You'll get somebody you can have a conversation with. And if somebody says they already have coverage in the first 2 minutes, I like to say, that's fantastic. The best clients that I already talked to have insurance. However, they find this information really valuable and then just go right back into your script. That's the easiest way to deflect. I already have coverage.
Yeah, I have that in the script. I usually will say, "That's great. I'm glad that you got covered. Out of curiosity, who did you go with?" And then they might say, "Oh, I went with this person." And then I have
Let me help you. So good
like
job.
other questions. I ask them like, "Okay, well, I'm an independent agent and I work with I want if they say, "Oh, I went with Mutual of Omaha." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. I work with them too. I'm an independent agent and I basically look at, what is the best coverage and budget for you. Uh, do you
Okay.
know how much?" And then I'll ask them questions like, like, do you feel confident in how much you're covered? Like, or I'll ask them like, do you know what type of insurance is it whole life, term life? Um,
Got it.
what is,
Can I make a
no.
recommendation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's role play at a separate time though. Like for example, get with someone or your leader and do
Yeah,
some role play one on one. But just to give you a quick, simple answer here, is just whenever you're talking to somebody who already has coverage and they're like, "No, I already got it. I already got it." Like, and they say it more than once. Hey, listen, that's fine. I work with over a dozen of the top carriers like Mutual of Omaha and Aflac. Would it be a terrible idea if you got just one more quote or looked at one more option before you close the
yeah,
door on this forever? And that's what I would recommend. And then let's set some time aside, Mario. That way, we got how many people here? 79. Let's make sure that we set some time aside to role play, and even if that's you and me, or a leader or
yeah.
your upline, okay? And
Okay,
we'll
thank
do the
you.
best we can on that. That's going to be able to we're going to be able to pinpoint, and we're going to want to look at your tracking sheet. Are you keeping your tracking sheet?
No,
Okay,
honestly, this is my first week, so I'll
got it.
probably update it.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's make sure you're
Yeah,
doing that on a daily basis, okay? Like we will help anybody kind of bend over backwards, but we only need a few things. We need the effort. We need to know how many dials you're making, how many people you spoke to, how many presentations you did. And if we know that, we can pinpoint on the area that needs the most help, which for most people, it's going to be the greeting, especially when they're starting out. And the
yeah,
more people that you dial, the more people, you're going to be able to see what's working in your introduction to get into a presentation. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to come off mute there. Okay. I want to answer any other questions here as well. Yeah, there are going to be state laws, right? So if you're probably licensed in, 3 to 10 or 15 states. If you're worried, go ahead and take a moment and look up whatever regulations you need to for yourself. You can put all your states on ChatGPT and say, I want to know the state laws applicable to how often and what times I can call the following states. So go online and get that data. If that's something that you have your attention on that you don't know, then go ahead and put that data in so you're not going to have call reluctance or, I call it call reluctance. Like I don't want to dial the phone. I don't feel like dialing the phone. That's why we have 90 for 90 coming up. So make sure you're on there and it's nice to dial with other people. And then again, I don't have the piece of paper in front of me, but keep a sheet. Like keep track it. You want to have one of these in front of you. It's right there on the new agent checklist, and I'm using it. I've been doing this for 7 years, so I've sold 3,000 policies. I'm not too good to keep track of all that stuff because actually, the more I can track it, the more control I can have over my results. Okay. You got dialed in, Sarah Sanderson. Absolutely. So like, dialed in would be perfect, Mario. I would recommend a dialed in. Hey, one other thing. Let's say you've called all those leads and you're just not getting any pickups. Jeremy Paxton said earlier, send him a text like, hey, Betty, this is Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy, this is Betty. Whatever your name is, right? So I would just call him. And after you've just not getting them to pick up, hey, shoot them a quick text. Maybe they don't know it's you or they don't know who it is. But I had a lady like when I texted her while we were on the phone, she wasn't getting the text. And then I called her. And then when I called her, she's like, wait, yeah, across my screen it says maybe Griffin calling me. She hadn't saved my number yet. So that's an advantage of why you might text somebody. Just say, hey, just be real simple. You don't need to send them a big long text. If you guys have a CRM, you have an advantage. We don't need to go into that, but you don't need the CRM to be successful. It's just a nice to have, but it's not a must have. It's a nice to have. Okay. So I do have it. I pay $97 a month for it. It can send out a text for me. In fact, the people that reply stop are the people I like to call first. It's not illegal to do that, by the way. They're saying no to a text. They're not saying no to a call, and they opted into phone calls. Okay, so I'll argue that with anybody.
Yeah,
Um,
it is actually posted that if they reply stop, we're supposed to cease all communication. He's put that in the challenge group or whatever it is, unchallenged group several
yeah,
times.
yeah, you just have to look at the law. So, like every state and federal law, you have to really look at that law. I don't, like if someone then don't text them. You know what I mean? If that's a problem with where you're dialing, I wouldn't text them. I would just call them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because they would have to say,
I'm
go
with
ahead.
I'm with you, and I was doing that. But then David came out and said, under no exceptions are we to continue contact in any shape or form if they reply stop.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything David says. Just look at what the law says as well. I encourage you to always look for yourself exactly what the law says. And as long as you're following the law, what's legal and lawful, then you'll be fine. You know what I mean? So, if David said it's illegal, sure. I mean, I don't know if all state laws are the same, but there are federal laws, so that applies to every state. Definitely just look at the law and follow the law and be legal. But yeah, I wouldn't text clients if I couldn't, if I had to cease communication with them, I just never would text them. But, I haven't ever had a problem. Um, I've made many, many calls, but you don't want to get sued and you don't want to have a litigator on you. So you definitely want to look into that, make sure you're doing the right thing. Okay. But don't let that hold you back from putting out the right effort. These people requested information and to be called. So, um, definitely I would just stick to dialing. That's why Shedrick Cooper doesn't really text anybody, by the way. So,
Hello?
hello. All right, guys, it's 9:29. Let's do the 90 for 90 and let's do the dialed in. Dialed ins. I'll see you in the 90 for 90, okay? Let's do this. All right, great meeting today.
Thanks, Griffin.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Griffin.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Griffin.
Thank you.